Dangote Cement has said it will look at exploring the use of alternative fuels to cut power costs. The group said it has a cost containment plan to improve its energy mix. One such plan is to make use of compressed natural gas in its vehicles. The group stated this in its results statements for the first quarter of 2023. According to the results statements, increased prices of automotive gas oil, known as diesel, resulted in a 7.9% year-on-year increase in selling and distribution costs. So joining us to discuss further, Chief Executive Officer, CEO at Dairy Hills Limited, Kelvin Emmanuel, joins us from our Abuja studios. Kelvin, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you make of, I guess, companies looking at or towards compressed natural gas as a way to cut costs?
Rotus, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on Global Business Report. Well, it's the way to go, and it's the way to go because if you notice very well, after Russian oil became, they had the embargo on Russian oil in Europe because of the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the prices of crude oil feedstock went up. Refineries in France, in the UK, in Germany, in Netherlands were short on feedstock. Russia was supplying Europe about 1.7 million barrels of crude oil per day, and that affected the supply of automotive gasoline oil, diesel, that Nigerian companies who were in the DSDP arrangement, direct sale, direct purchase agreement under NNPC, were getting allocation and in price, landing costs to Nigeria. Sorry, not DSDP, because diesel is not actually in DSDP. The independent marketers and major marketers, they were getting the landing price for diesel. So I remember very well in 2021, late 2021 and early 2022, January, we're buying a liter of diesel for tractors and bulldozers for about 270, 280 naira per liter. And then price just suddenly went up and cost went up. And if you look at the books of Dangote, you realize that the company said they spent about 56.7 billion naira on power and energy costs. And then if you look at the price per standard cubic meter of compressed natural gas in Lagos, you have something at somewhere around 270 naira per SCM. So 1 unit of SCM of compressed natural gas is about 0.97 liters of diesel. For the Dangote Cement plants in those states, in Ogun State, in Kogi State, using CNG, using gas generators is the way to go, because I expect that is going to cut down its cost by somewhere around 60%, given that the prices of gas in Nigeria is still regulated by the Nigerian Gas Management Company. And just to let you know, Rotus, Dangote Refineries actually last year installed 33 megawatts of industrial gas generators at its refinery in Ibeju, and the entire refinery is going to be running off grid. What I cannot authoritatively say is if Dangote is going to use shale gas, one of the pipes from shale gas that comes in from Ogun State into Ibeju Lekki, or if it's going to use compressed natural gas kits to actually power those gas generators that will power the refinery that is scheduled to begin sometime this year, 2023. So using compressed natural gas is the way to go for companies, both for the gas to power and gas to transport verticals. When you consider the fact that the Dangote Group has over 6,000 trucks on the road that moves products on a daily basis, and the price of diesel going up affects the rise in the cost of power and energy that contributes to their bottom line. It's actually the way to go. It's the way to go because if he can retrofit those diesel engines into gas engines or buy gas engines and amortize it over the useful life of the trucks, he's going to cut down the cost of haulage. And it's actually a major contributor to inflation in Nigeria because the rising cost of diesel affects the cost of production. There are companies that spend in the Northwest, in Kano especially, where you have over about 30 or 40 industrial rice milling plants that are doing more than 100 metric tons per day. There are companies in Kano that spend 700 million naira on diesel per year. There are companies that spend up to $1 billion on diesel per year. And the problem, for example, in the Northwest is that it's difficult for you to transport CNG, compressed natural gas, to the Northwest because there is a limit of 500 kilometers that a CNG truck can travel from the point of compression to the point of delivery. These are the kind of issues that the government needs to pay attention to, and companies need to pay attention to. Companies that are suffering from the rising cost of energy and has that indirect cost of cost affecting their production bottom line.
Kelvin, thanks for the breakdown. Excellent stuff. You mentioned, of course, Dangote being able to retrofit the trucks that run on fuel over to CNG. There's a cost, Kelvin, and we're talking about Dangote here, who is the wealthiest man in Africa. Dangote Cement, one of the biggest companies in the world. They can afford to do so. What about companies that are not Dangote, smaller companies? There was even talk in Nigeria. This administration said, it was a couple of years ago, that they wanted to convert 1 million cars in Nigeria from fuel to CNG in order to having to save on fuel, but that never happened because, you know, you would know this, the cost of that conversion is pretty high. So can other companies that are not a Dangote get past that upfront cost in order to make the transition? And I don't know, maybe you say that it's worth it over time, but that initial capital outlay is pretty high, is it not?
Well, Rutus, you bring up a very important point that is actually a point of debate in board meetings and management meetings when this question comes up about adopting compressed natural gas. Well, the thing is this, for the government, the whole talk about converting 1 million cars was just a public relations stunt to make people believe that they're actually doing something about the rising cost of energy and the risk of what will happen if petrol subsidy was to be removed. It's just a PR stunt. It's nothing serious. I don't think the government should take that seriously. Where CNG is actually useful is for gas to power for industrial gas generators and gas to transport for haulage trucks. Yeah, and the issue about the capital cost, for example, a 350 kVA gas generator is going to cost you somewhere around $200,000. Meanwhile, if you're going to get a diesel generator, you might be paying somewhere around 15 or 20% of that cost. It's left for the management of the companies to look at their balance sheet, look at their finances and ask themselves, okay, you know what? Do we want to continue spending 500, 700 million naira on diesel per year? Or do we want to invest $200,000 into this depreciating asset and amortize the cost over the useful life of the industrial gas generator, maybe 7 years or 10 years, you know? And you depreciate it over time. So at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, you realize that it's actually a better deal for you to buy that, invest in the gas generator and spend somewhere around 25 or 30% of the cost you spend on diesel than for you to continue to use diesel, because diesel is $1.20 per liter, and nothing is going to stop the price from going up above 1,000 naira per liter if the dollar keeps dropping. And if a commercial refiner does not come on stream very soon to do import substitution for diesel importation into Nigeria.
Just less than a minute to go, Kelvin. Do you think other companies will follow suit going forward? Briefly, if you can.
I think absolutely. In fact, last year there were discussions about BUA also following suit, setting up auto compression kits for actually converting or retrofitting their engines, or buying new gas engines and converting it, because, you know, like I said, the cost-benefit analysis favors you actually changing the engines to gas engines than for you to continue with diesel. Because when you look at the forward guidance for the price of energy in Nigeria, I don't think the price of diesel are going to come down below 700 naira per liter, even if Dangote comes on stream later this year.
Interesting stuff. It's going to be very, very, very pertinent to see how companies, you know, first of all, Dangote charting the way forward, and then how other companies follow suit. Kelvin Emmanuel, CEO, Dairy Hills Limited, thank you so much for joining us to talk about energy, which of course is a very, very pertinent and topical conversation here in Nigeria with the way forward.